Okay, folks, welcome to our second follow-up video to UNH stock and the downgrade today. So what we're going to talk about in this video is the announcement by HSBC Bank of their downgrade to a $270 price target on UNH. We'll take a look at the analyst ratings to see where HSBC is relative to the rest of the community. And I want to talk to you a bit about the history of HSBC and some nefarious behavior on their part, which is documented, historical, and fact-based. Now, I'm not implying that they did something nefarious today, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility for them to have completed a liquidity hunt. And we're going to talk about what a liquidity hunt is today, as well as taking a look at the chart, taking a look at valuations, and answering the question, has UNH and its recent rally run its course, or is it just getting started? So let's get to it. Let's talk a little bit about, first, HSBC. This bank has been front page so many times in the past when it comes down to nefarious behavior. It is ridiculous. A little bit of a blurb here, and I'll run through this. I'm not going to read everything. HSBC, one of the largest global banking institutions, has faced a number of legal and regulatory challenges over the years. These charges have ranged from money laundering, financial misconduct, sanctions violations, to tax evasion. Below is a timeline summarizing some of the major legal and regulatory charges and settlements involving HSBC. So, back in 2003, they were charged with U.S. anti-money laundering violations. Then again, in 2006, they were charged with tax evasion. Now, certainly, after these accusations, HSBC, they cleaned up their act. Their public image was tarnished. Certainly, they would never, ever, ever think about money laundering again. Or would they? Fast forward, 2010s. 2012, money laundering and sanctions violations. They paid a $1.9 billion fine for this one, as they were accused of helping Mexican drug cartels. Then in 2014, they were charged with tax evasion. Wait a minute. Money laundering and tax evasion. Where has that happened before? Oh, back in 2003, 2006, they paid a $1.9 billion fine in 2012 for money laundering. Certainly they've learned their lesson by now. Of course, they would never, ever do this again. CEO must have been fired. The board changed. New corporate governance rules were put into effect to make sure this never happened again. That HSBC was a pristine, reputable, international lending operation. Fast forward to 2015. U.S. mortgage-backed securities investigation. In 2015, they reached a $550 million settlement for those charges. Violation of sanctions, Iran and Cuba, 2016. 2017, tax evasion again. Number 3, third time, tax evasion. Now, I must say there were no criminal charges found here, so they got off the hook. So that's an allegation. Fast forward to the 2020s. 2020 tax evasion, yet again. Money laundering in 2020, yet again. 2020 Hong Kong protests, alleged involvement in China's crackdown. 2021, money laundering again. Fast forward to 2022 to 2023, U.S. investigation of HSBC's role in the global financial crime. Then again, last but not least, 2023, money laundering probes in Europe. So, the key takeaways here. HSBC has faced significant legal challenges over the years, especially concerning money laundering, financial secrecy, tax evasion, and violations of international sanctions. Major settlements such as a $1.9 billion fine in 2012 for money laundering violations have been some of the largest penalties ever levied against a global bank. But they did it again and again. So that's HSBC. Now, obviously here there's no mention of stocks, manipulation, but nobody really looks into that anymore. So what I think happened here today on the part of HSBC, and there'll probably be another couple of attempts by other banks to do the same deal here, is they created what you call a liquidity hunt. And here you have it. A liquidity hunt in the context of stocks and market manipulation refers to a strategy where traders or market participants intentionally create situations that force other traders or investors to sell assets, thus increasing market volatility, we saw that today, and triggering liquidity events. We certainly saw that today. This can be used to capitalize on forced sales by buying up stocks at lower prices or creating favorable conditions for manipulation. It often involves exploiting market participants' need for cash or necessity to meet margin calls. I talk about this all the time. If you are on margin and you are overweight stocks or individual stock, you are vulnerable to one of these liquidity hunts. There's very few things we can control in trading, but one of them is size, the size of our position. Here's how it works in a market manipulation context. Triggering forced sales. Now, this could be done by taking out a support level, because many traders will put a stop loss right below a known support level. You increase volatility. What happens when you increase volatility? Well, you can go out there and you could sell premium, because IV expansion, meaning the price of an option becomes more expensive, and in this case, put options. So if you want to get long, synthetically, you could sell a put option and get paid nicely. And then when the stock balances out, recovers, and begins to move up, since you're the seller of the put option and not the buyer, well, now what you're doing is you're profiting on that put losing value. That's the beauty of selling options, is that you are not the gambler, you are the casino. And these guys are definitely the casino. Exploiting margin calls. We touched upon this already. Now, stock borrowing and short selling. We're going to talk about this later on. You may have had some shorts move in today. I don't think it was a lot of it. I think what you had was a lot of fear on the part of weak longs and some shorts to help it along. Meaning, probably HSBC Bank or one of their partners out there was out there shorting the stock, keeping pressure on it all day long, making sure support levels were broken, stop losses triggered. And then one day, after all of the headlines dissipate, the volume to the downside dries up, all of a sudden you're just going to see a rip your face off rally similar to what we've seen the past several days. Now, I want to talk about the chart, but before we do that, I want to talk about our sponsor, which is our friends over at TrendSpider. Folks, if you're not using TrendSpider, you're like a trader that is using a bow and arrow and you're missing a major arrow in your quiver. I have so many uses for the product, meaning scanning, automated trend lines. If you are new to trading and you don't know how to draw your trend lines, you can do it manually on TrendSpider and then click a button and see whether or not you're accurate or whether or not you need to hone your skills a little bit more. And even if you're experienced like me, I always draw my trend lines because I want to stay sharp. The however is I will always use the automated trend lines on TrendSpider because I want to make sure that I haven't missed something, particularly on weekly and monthly charts where you've had a lot of history going back perhaps decades, and maybe you're looking a little bit too short term, maybe going back 5-10 years, where TrendSpider is picking up a 30-year, a 20-year trend line that you just couldn't pick up. So a ton of resources here at your disposal. Again, if you're not using it, it's like not having an arrow in your quiver. I'm going to go over some of the features that we talked about over the weekend. If you're not familiar, I did a video about why I was bullish on UNH. I posted it on YouTube. It's there now. I will link to it at the end of this video so you can view it at your leisure. So head on over. I'm not going to say use my discount code. I'm going to say use the link below on YouTube, link above on Twitter to head on over, because what they're doing is that they're having a Memorial Day sale and you can get up to 38%. I can only get you up to 35%. So take advantage of their great discount here, better than what I could give you, but please use the link below on YouTube, link above on Twitter, because they are a sponsor and they know that your support of them came through me. So that helps me out. Thank you very much. All right, let's get to the chart. So let's begin with a conversation as to why we like UNH still, even after this week's rally. I'm still long. They didn't shake me out. Did I add more in today's pullback? No, because the overall market today weakened up. I think that you would have seen a bigger bounce back on UNH than what we saw early on had the market not rolled over at the end of the day. So here's a weekly chart of UNH. And the reason why I began bull operations on UNH was because on a weekly time frame, which is where we usually begin our analysis of a stock to identify support and resistance levels, we use the support and resistance trend lines on TrendSpider automated. I did not draw these. This is the algorithm. And it bounced off of support down here, which is where we began bull operations. We did a couple of rounds of buying here, a couple of tranches. So we nibbled at extreme levels. Nobody wanted the shares. I saw two things here. One, we were at weekly support, and another item or another observation on a daily chart, we'll go to that in a moment, was that we were at support on a daily chart. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Let's stay with the weekly chart for a moment. So at support, then at the end of the week last week, we closed not above one support level, but back above a third support level. Very, very bullish stuff. Thus far this week, what do we have? We have the share price still holding the support level at around, let's call it 290. I think it's entirely possible that we trade down to that mark. I was impressed with the fact that we're able to hold $300 per share at the close today. However, I think there's probably a little bit more downside to retest support levels, especially if the overall market continues to weaken up here, which I think is entirely possible. And if we retrace back down to a support level, we begin to see stabilization in the market, we begin to see stabilization in UNH shares at a support level, then we will begin to add more or just simply sell puts and just generate cash flow off of the extremely expensive options. So again, with that strategy, we're the casino and not the gambler. So that's the weekly chart. The weekly chart is, yes, pretty ugly. The however is that we have some pretty serious support immediately below. What else do we like on the chart that caused me to begin bull operations? Daily view. So what I saw on a daily chart, the trend lines were not helpful because we were down below them. Right now, we know that a rally up to around $350 per share is going to result in some sellers or the opportunity for shorts to lean into the shares to the short side, hopefully trying to drag it back down to lower lows yet again. They're not going to do that until we get to a resistance level at which they know if it closes above that resistance level, then they know they're going to have to close out their position because their trade simply is not working. They're not going to do it with no support level or resistance level immediately nearby. It's just not going to happen. The amateurs might, and I think that what we could look at here, I alluded to this early that we were going to talk about the stock borrowing and short selling aspect of a liquidity hunt. And a tool on TrendSpider is short interest. And you could see, I shouldn't say short interest, short volume. All right, so this mechanism here is The data is pulled by, I believe, FINRA. And this way they can't do naked shorting on stocks. So this measures the amount of volume in terms of short selling. You could see that through May, it's skyrocketed. Now, to me, when you hit extreme levels, much as what we did last week, that's an indication that, you know what, you're at RSI back then of around 11.5, around there. That's where we began buying. It's unsustainable. Therefore, look for a rally, which is what we got. We're still up on our trade. Now, this week, you could see the short volume has really dissipated quite a bit. So a great tool here at your disposal on TrendSpider. So looking at this chart here, you know, there's an obvious support level, and that obvious support level is right here at around 280.38. I don't know if we're going to retrace that mark. You know, when you're trying to put in a bottom on a stock that's been in a downtrend like this, you're going to get a lot of backing and filling. Banks like HSBC or Goldman Sachs, they're not satisfied with buying the bounce. They don't want to do that. They want your stock. They want to force you out of your stock by manipulating the share price lower. That way, they know they are buying into a pool of liquidity that's huge and at a great price, because these guys don't buy 100 shares like mom and pop. They're buying 100,000 shares at a block. So they're buying when you're selling. You are providing them the liquidity so that they don't spike up the stock when they're buying. That's the value of a liquidity hunt. And this could have been HSBC. I have no proof that they did it, but I suspect they probably did. Now, there will probably be other banks out there that try to do the same thing. So what was the reason for this downgrade? Their reason was here this morning off of Benzinga. United Healthcare on Guardian report on payments to nursing homes says U.S. DOJ investigated these allegations, interviewed witnesses. I read the article here, and it's not a good article. The thing is that we already know that the DOJ has them under investigation. So this is not new news. They're under investigation. What this news is not going to talk about are the thousands of lobbyists that are going to be combing the country to make sure that their golden goose is not messed with. So for the foreseeable future, you're going to have bad news here. You're entering the midterm elections. People are not going to want to publicly say that they support UNH in an election year. If anything, they are going to play at the heartstrings of the public, and the news headlines will continue to come out weak. But much as what happened back here in 2012, $1.9 billion for money laundering and sanctions violation, it didn't stop them from doing it again. So anybody who thinks that a big fine on UNH is going to do anything to their business practices is sorely mistaken. So what the politicians say publicly versus behind the scenes, two different things. What I view to be a far more powerful barometer of as to where the shares of UNH stock are going to go is very, very simple. What are the insiders doing? And the insiders, they are buying. This gentleman here is the new CEO. He bought $25 million worth of the stock on May the 16th. That was last week. Lots of bad news coming out last week. CEO resigned abruptly, blah, 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 blah. He bought $25 million worth of stock. So am I going to put my faith into HSBC? Or am I going to put my faith into a CEO putting his own capital to work with a bunch of other insiders betting that the stock is going to recover and move up higher? It may be longer term, but eventually it will move up higher. Also, let's not forget that I'm doing a Memorial Day sale of my own. This is my coaching session. There's a link on my webpage, link below. In fact, I'll put this link down there so that way it takes you to directly this page. But for those that are not members, you get the members pricing. And for members, I'll send you a separate link. Drop me a note in the forum if you're interested, and I will take $25 off of the 1 hour session for you and make sure that you're not left out in the cold. All right, let's talk about the valuation of UNH, because it's very, very important to do a check back after a day like today. Shares dropped dramatically today. It's important to remember what the shares are worth. So the valuation of the stock is at 10-year lows on any metric: PE multiple, price to book, price to sales. This is even after this most recent rally off of last week's lows. So let not your heart be troubled here. There's a game afoot. It's a liquidity hunt. And unfortunately, it appears as though that the markets are weakening up here a little bit. Last week, I wasn't all too concerned about the correlation of the market to UNH. That's different this week due to the fact that UNH was extremely overbought with RSI at an 11 handle. That's no longer the case. So it's going to trade more correlated with the overall equity market. So understand the dynamics at play here, okay? Liquidity hunts. They're trying to blow out stops. How do you avoid being affected by that? Sell covered calls. Stay small in your position. Don't keep your stops too tight, and don't keep your stops at too close to a known support level, an easily identifiable support level. And that's it, folks. Have an awesome night. Don't forget about TrendSpider's discount. Don't use my discount code. You can get up to 38% off. And use my link below on YouTube, link above on Twitter. Help support the channel. Like, subscribe. I got some really great comments last week. Please leave a comment, and I will definitely get back to you. As well as don't forget about our one-to-one coaching sale. Members, $50. For non-members, use the members checkout. Make sure you use the checkout first and then select your time. Until we meet, please have a profitable trading day tomorrow and have an awesome Memorial Day weekend. Like, subscribe. You know the deal. Take care. Be well.